Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It's been a long 4.5, 5 years in which I've worn this uniform. By the time I take it off today, it will need battering to get it back into the cupboard because it's not been cleaned for 4.5 years. So I smell like a World War I soldier. So please forgive me. What I'll do really is just basically touch on what they wore, what they went through for the next 10-15 minutes, and then I'll open it up to you guys. And if you've got any questions, I don't believe I'm an expert in World War I, because an X is a has-been and a spurt is a drip under pressure, so I really don't pretend to be an expert, but if I can answer your questions, I will do. Soldiers in 1914 were issued with this thing. Short magazine Lee Enfield. Has 10 inside there. They always had one up the spout and the safety on. This thing will kill at a mile. Very, very effective weapon. Probably the best weapon ever created next to the Kalashnikov rifle. Every soldier had one of these. When the Germans first met the British at Mons in 1914, they honestly thought they were up against machine guns, because the British soldiers were firing these so quickly that they honestly believed they were up against machine guns. So you're more than welcome to take a look at any of this kit. Before 1915, the Germans, the dastardly Huns, actually used something. Can anybody tell me what it was? A new weapon? Gas. British never had seen a gas, they didn't know what it was, they had no idea. So basically what they had to do was, they didn't have gas masks, they didn't have anything like that. So basically what it was, get your handkerchief out, stick it over your nose and mouth, and breathe through that. But they had to do something first. Anybody tell me what it was? They had to pee on it. So you weed on your handkerchief, stuck it over your nose and mouth, and breathe through it. The problem was, if the gas was coming, and you had no idea and what it was, you realised, yeah, gas, and you couldn't wee. I don't want to wee. I've just had a wee. What do you think you did?
Use somebody else's.
Exactly. You've got your mate, we got very close in the trenches, you've got your mate to wee on it, and then you put it over your nose and mouth. It actually worked. The ammonia in the urine actually dissipated the gas. So, but we couldn't have the British Army going up and down the trenches peeing on the handkerchiefs all the time, so they came out with this very, very attractive thing, which made you look a little bit like Mickey Mouse. What you did then, you did this bit, put this on, stuck it inside your tunic. Very rarely did your eye holes meet up. You missed it up very, very quickly. And if you wanted to try and look left and right, your helmet didn't go with you. So a lot of the lads used to panic when they used to wear this. Plus the fact if you've already got a whiff of gas, and this was tucked inside there, you'd start to vomit. And of course it started to fill up. So that's the gas hood. Then they got this thing. I haven't got one in there at the moment, but this was a proper gas mask. The one that went over here and went down to a canister. The unfortunate thing with that was the canister was full of asbestos. So that was that. Okay. So let's go. This weighed about 107 pounds. So if you think about 28 bags of sugar that we were carrying, this is what this weighed. You had 150 rounds of ammunition in here. You had 2 pints of water. In there was your personal kit. Your personal kit, like your shaving kit, a few biscuits, a bit of tea and stuff like that. Second most important piece of kit. That's your third most important piece of kit. Second most important kit is your mug. Round here we go. This was not issued until 1916. So British soldiers were fighting in these things for 2 years. Just before the Battle of the Somme, they decided perhaps we should give them something that's going to protect their heads. So they got the all-important helmet. Helmets were always worn with the chin strap at the back, not at the front. Because if there was an explosion in front of you, your hat just went like that. Because if you had that like that, it would take your head off. So that was the helmet. just before the Battle of the Somme. So 150 rounds of ammunition, second most important piece of kit. In here is a shovel. We're digging that hole. Well, I didn't really dig the trenches with these, but there's a shovel and a pick. It's really to scrape the ground. If you are caught in no man's land, you can scrape a hole to hide in. So the shovel thing is at the back, but what you can see photographs of soldiers at the Battle of the Somme going over the top, and for some strange reason they managed to get this piece of metal dangling down here. No idea. Don't matter about the head, but make sure other parts of your body is protected by a bit of metal. So they had that. There's the handle for it, and of course, and here, the all-important bayonet. If you do touch this, ladies and gentlemen, please, it is sharp. I haven't honed it off, so this will fit on there. So it is quite an effective fighting weapon. All, again, British soldiers were well trained in the use of bayonets. That's that. So what else we got? So that's that and that. The other thing, didn't matter what religion you were, strangely enough in 1914, every soldier was issued with a Bible. So even if you were Muslim, Hindu, Jewish, whatever, you tended to get a Bible, Christian Bible. There wasn't too much sort of thought given to your religion. When you look at a World War I soldier's uniform, even if you don't know the soldier, you can tell an awful lot about what he's been through and what he did. Because if you look at this, I'm obviously a sergeant, I'm a colour sergeant, but you'll see these strange stripes on here. One red and the rest of them blue. The red one meant I'm an old contemptible, meaning that I was there in 1914. What the Kaiser called the contemptible little army that was against him. That's the red one. Then you've got 1914, 15, 16, 17 and 18. You'll see these with 3, 2, 1 on there, but that's the important one, the red one, proving that I'm an old soldier. It also proves I'm an old soldier because I was in the Boer War in 1900, so you can tell that I am an old soldier and I fought abroad before the First World War as well. So that's that. The interesting thing you'll see here on my sleeve is like a gold piece of metal. That's called a wound stripe. And sometimes you'll see soldiers with 3, 4 or 5 of these across here. It meant that if you'd been wounded, sent to hospital, repaired, you could be sent back to the trenches. This was like a badge of honour to say that you've been wounded and you've been returned. We have thoughts of the Great War. Yes, it was a horrible, horrible war. Yes, we were covered in lice. Yes, we were covered in all sorts of goo. Okay? But if I asked you, out of 100 men, how many were killed? Out of 100. Out of every 100 we sent to France, Belgium and all the other places, how many were actually killed? 75%. 75%. 80? No, 80. 18%? 98%? 11. 11% of our soldiery actually was killed in the Great War. We think it's a lot more. It's got into our psyche that it was a lot more. Okay? And it was 11%. Yes, it was a lot. When you think about the Second World War, which on average was about 7%, okay, so there was a great deal more, but we've got in our minds that it was a lot more. As a frontline soldier, how many days would I spend in a trench in one go? 28 days in a trench in one go, yeah?
6 months.
6 months in the trenches in one go? 4 days. So we were in the frontline trench with this thing for 4 days. Then we'd be rotated back to rest, work, back to the trenches. So roughly 10 days a month that we would actually be in the frontline trench. Now our officers, God bless them, and we think about Blackadder when he says, yes, I'll be behind you. Yes, sir, 35 miles behind us. If we've got 11% attrition rate for ordinary soldiers, What's our attrition rate then for officers?
22.
5%? 22%? It's around about 17%. Our officers were hit worse than the ordinary soldier. We've got this idea that they were in cushy jobs behind. Over 200 generals were killed in World War I. We've got this idea that they sat back and they were lions led by donkeys and they were in the nice, safe place, when in point of fact the British Army always had an officer leading them. If they were going out on a trench raid, if they were going out to attack, it was always the officer that took the first step out of that trench to lead his men. And if you were a junior officer, second lieutenant or whatever, your average life expectancy was about 6 weeks when you were in the trenches. So there's all sorts of stuff that we think about, you know, about the Great War. It's gone into our psyche. And the other one is, what happened on Christmas Day 1914?
They joined together, didn't
They did, they all met. The Germans actually got out the trenches first, and they met in no man's land. That was not happened all the way down the line. 400 British soldiers were killed on that day, so it didn't happen all the way down the line. But yes, they got out the trenches, yes, they met. And no, there was no football match. Thought we lost on penalties anyway. So, yeah, there was no there was a kickabout. I think the Cheshire lads were involved in a kickabout, and so were the Norfolk lads in a kickabout with the Germans. But it was all about trade. When they got out, we had this little tin. You may have seen it. It's a little goldish tin, Princess Mary tin. Every soldier in the front line was given one of these, and in it was a Christmas card of the King, photograph of the King, photograph of Princess Mary, some tobacco and some cigarettes. So we had a lot of tobacco and cigarettes. The Germans had black bread, they had sausages, they had meat and stuff like that. So when we met out in no man's land, it was about trade. Okay, we were going to swap cigarettes for food. A lot of the Germans, strangely enough, could speak English. Very few of the Tommies could actually speak German, but a lot of them had worked over here or had some connection with us, so they could communicate. So there was a lot of stuff. When you research it, though, when you actually go into the war diaries, because every unit, every day had to record what was happening, there is very little mention of the Christmas truce in any of the war diaries. Any ideas why? It was illegal. What they actually did was fraternising with the enemy was completely illegal and contrary to all military rule. So when they actually got out there and shaking hands and swapping stuff and kicking a ball about, it was illegal. So there's very little mention of the Christmas truce in any of the diaries at all. So, now, the most important piece of kit that the soldier has, and he carries it all the time. Now, you might well find that this, you're taking your webbing off, and it's over here somewhere, and somebody shouts, food. And your pack may be down there. In my putties, I've just got a spoon. And in my putty there is my spoon. It's always ready for action. Basically, you take it out, scoop the mud off it, and then it's ready. This is a genuine World War I soldier spoon. When I go on digs in France with some archaeologists, sometimes we're lucky enough to find the guys. Now, they've been in the ground for 100 years, and we find them. It hasn't happened to me, unfortunately, but sometimes you find that they've still got this attached to the bottom of their leg, the bone, the bottom of the leg. And sometimes if we can take it off, it might have his name, or it might have his regimental number, because these things here survive in the ground. Obviously the skin doesn't, the bones do most of the time, and sometimes we find a name. And if we find a name, we've got a chance of putting a name and taking a name off Teep Val or taking a name off Tyne-Cot and actually giving him a resting place. Because if you look at Tyne-Cot, 32,000 names, Teep Val, 72,000 names of soldiers, we've got no known grave for. We don't know where they are. So if we can take another one off, that's a blessing for us, and that's what we do. just one other piece of kit which I'd like to show you. In 1918, there was a British raid on the trenches, and it was led by an officer, a sergeant, and 10 men. Basically what they did, they went out, run to the German trenches, threw a few bombs in, tried to grab a prisoner if they could to find out who they were against and what was happening. So they grab a prisoner, run back to the British lines, throw the prisoner into the British trench, then jump in afterwards. This particular raid, they got part of the way. The officer had been killed, two of the privates had been killed. They did the bombing raid. They grabbed the prisoner, they grabbed two actually, and brought him back. Threw them into the British trench. The sergeant jumps into the trench, and the lad behind him jumps into the trench, but unfortunately the lad behind him still got a bomb. And as he jumps like this, he drops it and it goes off and it kills them. And what they did then, they buried the lads, they packed all the kit together and sent it back to Britain. And this is that sergeant's whistle. His name was Arthur Berry. He was with the Manchester Regiment. I'm from Knutsford, so he was from Knutsford, and his great nephew rang me up a few months ago, or years ago now, and said, I've got some stuff, do you want it? It's like gold dust to me. So yes, I said, and so I've got his medals, I've got stuff. But this is his whistle that he carried on that day, which is very, very precious to me. And last year I was lucky enough to go to his grave. So I'm standing there telling Arthur what I've got. I said, I've got your postcards, by the way, and I've got your medals. They're safe. And I've got your whistle, and I go into schools. And people are walking past me, scratching their heads, thinking this guy's lost it. You know, because I'm talking to this piece of stone about what I've got of Arthur's. So it's quite an emotional time.
In Flanders Fields by John McCrae. In Flanders Fields the poppies blow between the crosses, row on row, that mark our place, and in the sky the larks, still bravely singing, fly, scarce heard amid the guns below. We are the dead. Short days ago we lived, felt dawn, saw sunset glow, loved and were loved, and now we lie in Flanders Fields. Take up our quarrel with the foe. To you from failing hands we throw the torch. Be yours to hold it high. If ye break faith with us who die, we shall not sleep, though poppies grow in Flanders Fields. It was Christmas Day in the trenches. All was silent and stilled as the soldiers stood waiting their orders to go out and kill or be killed. When a song drifted over the wasteland from the German lines close by, 'twas the sound of a soldier singing, his voice sounding clear and high. And their hearts stirred with wonderful memories of their Christmas days in the past, and the families and friends left behind them in a peacetime that wasn't to last. The words were strange and foreign, but the tune was one we all know, a carol that tells the story of a silent night long ago. They joined in the singing together, raising their voices in praise, using words familiar from Blighty they'd learned in their younger days. Then, one by one they left hiding and faced their enemies there, till the hatred they felt slowly melted to a comradeship all of them share. All down the front line it happened. The soldiers, once ready to kill, laid down their guns and gave handshakes, exchanging gifts and goodwill. So why can't we all make the effort to find peace and friendship at last, and remember the lesson they taught us on that silent night long past. Flanders mud, a million dead for no damn good. They went to show the world they could. They're under crosses made of wood. Some were blown to smithereens, mostly kids still in their teens. But some are lame and some are blind and some are simply off their minds. Light a candle, say a prayer. Some survived and that's not fair, but the world just doesn't care to know what they have suffered there. It's hard for them to laugh and sing, and hard the nightmares that sleep brings. So don't turn out the bedroom light, they'll wake up screaming in the night. Just walk down rows of Portland stone and think about the boys you've known that lived in everybody's street and now lie dead beneath your feet. They didn't think that they would die. They didn't think to wonder why. They just went off expecting glory. Now few are left to tell their story. Those who live, the world's forgotten. Forgotten too, the dead and rotten. All that death and all that pain to stop it happening again. All that death and all that pain to stop it happening again.